Hi, I'm Vivian Wei, COO of Salesforce Unified Agentforce Platform. In this week's AI Heroes and Headaches, I sit down with Vin Vashishta, engineer by training, best-selling author of From Data to Profit, and one of the boldest voices in AI strategy. His advice? Stop buying AI, start buying outcomes. And efficiency is so yesterday's win. The future is revenue, scale, and impact. Don't miss this one. Hey, Vin, thank you so much for joining me on AI Heroes and Headaches podcast. It's been a while. How have you been?
Been great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, when you and I met, I still remember vividly we got into a discussion because you're like one of the few kind of, I think about unicorns, right? You went from being an engineer
Yep.
to then like the publisher of Data to Profit. And you're now on the business side of, hey, how do we harness the power of data and AI to value? Tell us a little bit about that journey, how you got started. You studied physics. Tell us more.
Yeah, studied physics and computer science. Actually started with civil engineering. I was one of those indecisive college students. And then the college that I went to, University of Nevada, Reno, got a grant from Microsoft for $1 million to do education around machine learning. And I thought, oh, great, I'm going to take these classes. I'm going to graduate.
Yeah.
Microsoft's going to hire me. I'm going to work in AI. I'm going to build these cool things. No. So that was the first little boom and bust cycle. Most people don't realize there was one in the 90s that came before all of these different hype cycles. And I got caught up in that, but
Mhm.
graduated and said, okay, I've got to do something with this, technology. I've got a computer science degree, a physics degree. What am I going to do? And just went into traditional software development, worked my way up from the ground floor, was doing QA, testing, installing software, installing systems, ended up doing software engineering, software development, ran some teams, built some cross-functional, multi-discipline teams, did
Mhm.
DevOps before DevOps was a thing, and then
Wow.
got into product management because I was in a meeting and realized, wait, so being the technical guy isn't enough anymore? Wait a minute,
Mm.
why is everyone listening to all these other people? I'm
Uh-huh.
the expert. Why aren't you listening to me? And that's when I realized, oh, there's an entirely different dimension to the business. There's customers, there's
Mm.
internal stakeholders, there's all of this world outside of the business. And finally, 2010 comes around and BI turns into analytics. Google starts doing real data science and real machine learning. We finally have the
Mhm.
technology to do all of that. And so I started my business in 2012, and it has been absolutely bonkers since then. I've had a ton of fun. But you're right, it is
Yeah.
really going from delivering technology to
Yeah.
realizing that no one really cares about the technology. Everyone cares about what the technology does for them. What
Yeah.
experiences does it enable? How does it allow their customers to do things that they couldn't do in the past?
Right. Yeah.
And what can I do as a business with the technology that I could never do before? I realized I couldn't get bigger budgets. I couldn't get the bigger checks
Right.
signed off if I
Yeah.
didn't start focusing on value and explaining how we're going to make
Yeah.
money with it. Crazy thought, right? Businesses are for profit. Technology should be
True.
too. Who knew? So got into really heavily, got into the strategy side,
Uh-huh.
eventually got asked by Wiley to write From Data to Profit and explained
Mhm.
here are the frameworks to monetize data, to monetize AI, to go from low
Mhm.
maturity to a more advanced maturity company. I wrote so many pages, they actually told me to stop. I got to page 250 and I
That's
got a,
amazing.
you know how in the old school they used to get the cane and they would pull people off stage? That's basically what they did with my writing. I said, no, 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 I need 3 more chapters. I got to cover some product management. And they said, no more. You're done. Get out. Stop.
That's so funny. Hey, okay, there's so much to unpack here because kind of I feel like you kind of just follow the money, follow
Oh,
the
yeah.
problem, right? And
Yes.
then you learn the skills to frame the problem into a value creation story to get executive sponsorship and then get things done, of course, because you're an engineer by training and like when something is funny, you deliver. I guess, going back to I didn't know about the story in the 90s, that hype story, right? And Microsoft funding. Because right now there's a lot of talk about, hey, there's an AI hype, it's generative, and CIOs are investing a lot of money with the large language models, but they're not seeing the value. What do you make of that? What are you seeing in the market?
When I talk to C-level leaders, I tell them stop buying AI, start buying outcomes. Forget
Mm,
about the technology. Ask, what can this do for my business? What is the outcome that this will deliver that your
mhm,
last product couldn't, or that your last technology couldn't, or that your
mhm,
last feature, your last platform, whatever it is? What can this do now because of AI that it couldn't do before? And what
mm,
outcome in my business does that connect with? When you start looking at it that way, you completely change
mm.
just everything about the conversation. Now you're not
Yeah.
talking about why am I using AI? You're talking about why am I using technology? And what's really interesting about agentic, as we get into the agentic paradigm, it's
Mhm,
not just LLMs. It's not large language models.
mhm.
That's the AI is ChatGPT is AI. Yes, but it's not the only kind. We have
Right.
so many different flavors of AI. We have physical AI, which is things like autonomous driving and autonomous mobility. We have robotics.
Mhm.
We have simulations where we are building, this is, sort of digital twins on steroids. We're
Yep.
building a twin of the business, a twin of a train, a twin of an airplane, a twin of physical things and of sort of conceptual virtual things in these simulations and figuring out
Mm.
what's the best way forward with these things. What should we
Yeah.
do? What's the best way to board an airplane? And you would use your simulation of the airplane to tell you
Yeah.
what's the best boarding route. What is the best way to get people on fastest? Why do we care? Well, because if we can get people on faster, we can get more planes in and out of that same gate every day, connected to outcomes. So if I'm saying my outcome is I need more planes per gate, what can you do for me? Well, the simulation can help you figure that out. So it's not
That's
about
so cool.
asking,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not about asking what's the technology, what is the AI. It's about tell me your outcome and we'll figure it out from there.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So kind of moving away from, hey, here's the next shiny object. Well, keep the shiny objects in mind, but really let's look at the real world, like customer experience. What can you accomplish from the experience perspective to unlock more business opportunities? Can you give us an example? I love the airplane example. Can you give us another example where you work with a customer and created that aha moment?
Worked on a pricing model
Mm,
with a very large retailer. And I tell this story in one of my course. Actually, funny thing, taught it earlier today, where
mhm,
teaching how to tell that story to C-level leaders and executive leaders in a way that resonates with them. Because as
mhm.
engineers, we're not real good at that, are we? We don't talk about case studies in the right way. We talk about it, oh, hey, check out this cool technology and this model, and look at this
Right.
thing. I have charts. Look at all my charts. Look at all the data, and I'm so excited. And everyone in the audience is just it's
What?
like they've been hit by a wave and they just say, stop, please. Can someone make this person stop talking? I've had enough. Let me out of here. That's really what happens. And we need to tell stories in a completely different way. We
Mm,
need to be able to explain things like we were working on the pricing model, but I'm not
mhm,
going to talk about the pricing model. I'm going to talk about one data point that we found in their warehouses and distribution centers, which was a lot of space was being taken up by these really big ticket items with very, very low margins. And at
mm.
times when they needed to move items to the
Yeah.
store from your central hubs and your distribution centers, and even just in the stock room in the store, you had all
Mhm,
this the space being taken up by these big ticket items with really,
mhm,
really tiny margins, where you could take up the
mhm,
same amount of space with a lot of low ticket items with much, much higher
mhm,
margins. And we came up with
mm.
one metric, which was margin per square foot. One data point changed the way that they looked at their warehouse. It used to be this static, this goes
Yeah.
here, this goes there, that goes here. And what we did was with pricing, when we detected that they were getting close to running out of a high margin item, or
Yeah.
there was about to be a demand spike and we couldn't replenish fast enough because we had a space issue, we would actually put some of those big ticket items on sale
Uh-huh.
and sell it at cost or even a tiny bit of a loss
Yeah.
because you cleared out that space so that you could bring in high margin item
Wow.
and
Yeah.
distribute it just in time so that you could improve margins.
This
And
is so
that's the way we,
fascinating.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's AI. We don't talk about AI like that. I didn't say anything about technology. I didn't show you a
Right.
cool dashboard or anything. I told you about one data point. And with one data point and changing why and how we optimize the way distribution centers and the way warehouses use floor space to maximize not the, some, we've got to put that there, this there, some maximize margins, margin per square foot.
That's super
That
interesting.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a game changer. And just one data point. One, and
See,
there was a lot behind it. Trust me, the technology behind that
yeah.
was intense. But it was just one data point that changed everything.
And that's super interesting, right? Because I think what you're saying is, well, as an engineer by training, and if you want to move upstream to provide more value, you have to be able to create the connections and connect the dots. Maybe it's a KPI in the warehouse, but how does it connect to, the top line and the bottom line, margin profile, growth, efficiencies like that the C-suite is going to care about. And then also using those core KPIs as outcome metrics to then define what are the different parameters that you can optimize. In your case, it's, optimize like the amount of space it can free up per, the margin per space, right?
Yep.
Like that is super cool. Um, Wow, that's very eye-opening. I love this. And maybe talk a little bit about, so you've been in this kind of AI trenches. You talked about this kind of mindset, right? What's one of the hardest truth about AI adoption that today, like most thought leaders won't say out loud?
Ooh, so there's a couple of them, and they're both related. So I'll say both of them
Mhm.
at the same
Yeah,
time. First one is AI is a data and information product. No data, no AI. So thought leaders, and they won't tell you this, that you can't go straight to AI. You'll even hear people that are all about the data, sort of walking themselves back and going, no,
yeah,
well, actually, I think there are some use cases where you could get away with no data, but there really aren't. AI is an information product. I don't know how to train a
right,
model without data or without information. I don't know how to do that. I don't know anyone who does. So if you don't have information and data, even if you have an agent, let's pull an agent off the shelf. Let's give it no
mhm,
data and see how well it serves your customer. It doesn't have any information about the return that your customer is trying to process. It doesn't know your policies about returns. It doesn't know how much the price of that product was when they purchased it. It doesn't know
right.
anything.
Yeah,
Let me know how it does. Just
yeah,
just let me know. How
yeah.
you
I
can't
I think
prompt
of,
engineer
yeah.
your way out of that one.
100%. Like I think of an agent is only as good as the context it has with the specific data. And in the enterprise world, when we work with large enterprise customers, it really is like all of the enterprise data, the context, the existing workflows, and then on top of that, how people work together, right? Because like you can design a machine, but then when you incorporate the people and the emotions, it's very different orchestration.
Completely.
So it really resonates with me in terms of, I'm actually surprised that like data leaders wouldn't come out loud and say like, hey, AI is only good as the data you have.
Yep. That's really it. You can't build models without it. You also can't keep those models working reliably. They can't have agency. There's no action behind the model itself. So it can give you an answer. Is it right? Yeah, you hope so. But that's
Yeah.
not how you should run a business. That's not how you should deliver product. You
Yeah.
shouldn't hope everything works. You should have guardrails in place so that it does. What are those guardrails built on? It's no longer built on code. We
Yeah.
used to build guardrails around code. Now we build guardrails around information and knowledge graphs.
Hmm.
Those have become our guardrails. So instead of creating requirements documents and then putting that business logic into the code,
Hmm.
now we are relying on our information, our knowledge graph
Yeah.
to extract and semi structure. I don't want to call knowledge graphs structured quite yet, but in a
Hmm.
semi structured way, put forward a data model which
Hmm.
has not only data points, but it's more context first. It's entity context first
Hmm.
versus data point first. And when you have all of those relationships between
Hmm.
data points, between workflows, between who's doing the workflow and what their outcome is, what is it that they're hoping to get at the
Yep.
end of this workflow? Those are the guardrails that you need to deliver very reliable agentic systems.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And right now there's a lot of talks about having determinism in the models itself, and how do you provide accurate information, especially if the agent is being set up to like automate some of the workflows that humans, it's too repetitive and humans shouldn't be doing. 100% on that. Let me ask you this. So right now there's also a lot of talk about efficiency, AI efficiency, and then people's immediate association is, okay, if the companies are running more efficiently, I'm going to lose my job. And what is it in my place? Like, why would I embrace AI? Because if it means I'm going to lose my jobs, my colleagues are going to lose their jobs. And what's your point of view on that? And what's kind of one bold, unexplored way that you see where AI can actually create new revenue streams and opportunities?
Well, I think the first thing to realize is the cost savings aren't enough. You have to
Mhm.
look at how expensive AI is. And if you can, with the discipline that you need, look at $1 million opportunity and
Yep.
step over it so that you can get to these $1 billion opportunities, you're thinking about
Mhm.
it correctly. The cost savings is that $1 million opportunity. And it takes a significant amount of courage and conviction to say
Mm.
that's not the biggest thing we could be doing. Just because we could get a quick win with cost savings
Mhm.
doesn't mean we
Yep,
should take this million and lose $1 billion. And that's the
that's
way
right.
that C-level leaders need to be thinking about AI. It's not enough to just save money. We have to think about, how does AI enable growth? How do we turn traditional cost centers into revenue generators? How do we develop
Mm.
best in class capabilities that become a competitive advantage? I talk
Mhm.
about email marketing is a really simple use case for this. When we think about email marketing, what do we focus on? We focus on open rates. How many
Mhm.
people opened this email? What did we
Mhm.
just forget? What did we just completely forget? If we have a 30% open rate, what about the other 70%?
Mm.
And we have no data on them. We don't know what happens when you don't open an email. And what's interesting is, if you run this side of the workflow down, and this is something that data information and gathering, sort of this workflow centric view,
Mhm.
you can begin to look at that and say, okay, what do we do with that 70% that prevents them from? Because what happens is they disconnect from marketing. They look at the marketing emails and either they delete them. That's actually the best case
Mhm.
scenario, is they delete them. What's the worst
Mhm.
case scenario? They hit the
Unsubscribe.
spam. No,
Yeah.
spam's worse. As soon as you hit the spam filter,
Uh-huh.
you can never access their email address again, because their
Oh, right.
spam takes it and goes, nope, this domain out. Never
Yep.
again. So you've lost access to that email. Unsubscribe is terrible, but it's actually better because they
Yep.
may resubscribe someday,
Right?
and at least the email will get to them. With the spam filter, what we found was that's a
Mm.
100% hard firewall. You're done. You can never send anything to that email again. And the
Mhm.
customer may not know why they're not getting your emails, because
Mm.
6 months ago, a year ago, they hit spam,
Yeah.
and you now have no access ever again. So
Wow. Right.
and that's just a data point. That's just basic analytics of finding, following the workflow and saying, okay,
Yep.
how do I turn that loss? Because we're investing to get these emails. We did something to get the customer to give us their email, and that's an
Mhm.
investment. And if 70% of them are going down the delete,
Mhm.
spam, unsubscribe, disconnect from marketing, this company doesn't understand me anymore, if they're going
Mhm.
down that workflow,
Right. Yeah.
that's a huge growth opportunity. So now
Yes.
we're talking about going from this cost center, which we didn't even know was there
Right.
until we did the analytics, to what do we send them as soon as we realize that they didn't open an email? That needs to set off alarm bells. And now I need a
Mm. Mhm.
model that will
Mhm.
help predict, based on this segment that this customer falls into,
Mhm.
what is the 100% guaranteed open email that I can send them next? Because if that next email isn't perfect, I'm in so
Mhm.
much. I'm going down that, I'm down the river and I have no control of where that investment ends up, and it's going to be ending up in a loss. And potentially, I
Right.
can never get access to this person's email again. So sometimes the win is, don't send as many emails. Sometimes the win is
Yeah.
creating a model that immediately segments that person in a totally different
Yep.
bucket and changes the
Yep.
behavior of marketing towards them. That's where, when you think about it, it's not about cost savings. Yeah, I could have eliminated maybe 2
Mm.
marketers. Maybe I get rid of 2 interns. Great. Who cares? You just lost
Right.
70% of your email list because you decided to get rid of 2 interns instead of changing their workflow and rededicating them to that 70%.
This is fascinating because I feel like sometimes when I talk to marketers, they celebrate, oh, we have a 30% open rate. This is amazing. What you're saying is, hey, guess what? With technology and our understanding of the activation, segmentation activation, and open rates data, you can probably maximize that open rate and change how often you're sending those notifications. And by the way, all of the data you've collected about your customers, you can use that to create the most relevant content at the right time in the right place. If you do this right and use the right technology and look at the problem in the correct way, and then let's face it, like, you don't cut costs to go from a $1 billion company to a $10 billion company. You have to invest in the right places to grow. And AI can provide that vehicle, especially agentic AI. It's just a matter of like having the right mindset and looking at the same metrics differently.
Yep. I mean, Steve Jobs said you can't save your way to growth. One of my
Yeah.
absolute favorite quotes, but you know what AI does? It turns them into a liar. You can save your way to growth. Because remember, those 2 interns, you were going to get rid of them. You've taken their job and you've automated a fair amount of it. So those 2 marketing interns, you're thinking, I can lay them off. Or you can
Mm-hmm.
redirect that effort. And so instead of increasing your spending, you're just
Mm-hmm.
using your people in a different way since they don't
Mm-hmm.
have to. And this is the cost saving side. Yes, you
Yep.
do the automation. They don't have to focus as much on that 30% open rate and doing all of the content creation there.
Yep.
Let's put the human mind to work on
Mm-hmm.
our much harder problem, which is how
Mm-hmm.
do we get that 70% not to unsubscribe? How do we get that 70% not to put us in the spam folder?
Mm-hmm.
How do
Yep.
we get that 70% to open that next email? And
Right.
now you're putting the smartest minds you have, the best, really the best talent that you have,
Yeah.
instead of letting the agent handle everything. Let the agent handle the things that you understand the best and put the people on the things that you don't, so
Right.
that you can start improving in the direction. And so that's why I say this kind of turns Steve Jobs into a little bit of a liar. You don't have to spend anymore. You're simply
Uh-huh. Right.
redirecting those resources. You don't
Yep.
have to hire. And you are now, instead of downsizing those people, you are redirecting them to a higher value
Yes.
workflow.
Yeah. Okay, now you're getting into a topic I feel very, very passionate about, especially in the space of marketing. Because right now there's also a lot of, people talking about, oh, Gen Zs are not going to be able to find jobs. We no longer hire them. Those interns, they're of no value. AI is going to do all of the work. And then I think about, hey, the entire marketing space is changing so rapidly, just like how in B2C, there's a lot of influencers. In B2B, there's thought leaders and creators who create really intelligent, like fun content that builds relationships with their customers. And the way I think about that, I was talking to the Cluely CEO, and I was like, oh, how do we re-engineer this? He's like, you know what? Just get a few interns or fresh college grads to look at your corporate handles and give it a different flair. That in and of itself is going to help you unlock new growth opportunities. What's your thought? I know you're very passionate about the future of work. What is your thoughts in terms of, if you're somebody fresh out of school, how would you guide them? And then if you're an enterprise leader, how would you think about, how much to hire those new leaders? And tell us more.
So the first thing I want to say is that education definitely has to change. We have
Mm.
to reinvent, just like we're reinventing everything. Products are
Mhm.
reinventing, enterprise workflows are reinventing, marketplaces
Mhm.
are reinventing. This isn't going to somehow skip education. Education needs to evolve so that when someone graduates, they graduate capable of doing a job, delivering an outcome. We also
Mhm.
have to think about it in terms of no one's ever done learning anymore. In engineering, we take this for granted. We learn new programming languages every couple of
Yep.
years.
Yep.
If I only knew that, actually, I'd be all right. I got C growing. No, I'd be all right. But normally, the programming languages you learn in your first five
Yep.
years will change the next 5 years, and then there'll be another one 5 years later. We're constantly learning, constantly reskilling
Mhm.
and upskilling, constantly learning new frameworks, constantly learning new techniques, new methods. So in
Mhm.
engineering, we've been doing this the entire way.
Mhm. Yep.
Now I want you to think of every other part of the enterprise is now in
Mhm.
exactly the same place because technology is an inextricable part of everyone's job. So as technology changes, they will now also need to continuously retrain and upskill. So I want you to think about everyone in your business being obsolete in
Mhm.
2 years because
Mm.
everyone's skill set in your business might as well be an intern in 2 years from now. So whether
Mm.
you hire
Mhm.
someone who's fresh out of college
Yep.
or you hire someone that's got 10 years of experience, what they will need to know in 2 years will be very different than what they know right now. You
Mhm.
have to think of your workforce as continuously evolving. And when I'm working with clients, one of the first things I build for them
Mhm.
is an internal training and upskilling program. You cannot
Mm.
survive on this. We're going to hire, then we're going to lay some people off, and then we're going to hire in different areas, and then we're going to lay people off, and then we're going to hire in different areas. You can't do that. If you're not looking at how expensive that is,
Yeah.
C-level leaders, look at how expensive it is to lay someone off and all the costs associated with that, and
Yeah.
then hire someone new somewhere else and all the costs associated with that. Put that
Mhm.
on one side of the equation, and then look at a
Mm.
training and upskilling program. Put that on the other side of the equation, and you let me know which one you like better. Do you like
Mm.
the
That's super
do you like
interesting.
layoff? Yeah. Or do you
Yeah.
like retraining and upskilling? Because you need to create a farm club for your business in 2 years from now. And the business today is the farm club 2 years from now. You need to be developing employees with just in time capabilities. And this is
Mhm.
why strategy is so important right now, especially
Yep.
technical strategy. You
Yep.
have to have a roadmap that looks 2, 3, 4 years out. As hard as that is to do, you
Yep.
must have a roadmap that's 2, 3, 4 years out. Why? Because your workforce today has to be becoming, has to be learning to be the workforce that you will need 2 years from now to
Mhm.
execute on that roadmap. If you don't have this construct of continuous transformation and of
Yeah.
flywheels being built within your business that
Yep.
amplify value over time, then you're going to be behind. We're not talking about continuous improvement anymore. And I want to make this very clear. Improvement
Yep.
is sort of your velocity,
Mhm.
whereas transformation is your acceleration. And when you think about it in those terms, right now, everyone wants to be, higher velocity, higher velocity. No,
Mhm.
you want your acceleration rate to be increasing. That's why flywheels are so important. That's why
Mhm.
things like internal training and upskilling programs are so important. So don't think about that intern as this is the person, this is, who I'm hiring, this skills,
Mhm.
this everything today. Think about this person's just like everyone else I have in my business. Right now, they have skills that can be applied, but in 2 years from now, if they're not training and upskilling, they'll be obsolete anyway. And if I
Yep.
don't put the frameworks in place to
Yeah.
support them, it doesn't matter who I hire. I can hire somebody with 25 years of experience. If they don't know how to learn,
Yeah.
and this is something that I can't remember who said it, but it was just a couple of days ago. They said, well, the most important capability
Mhm.
today is learning to learn. That is the absolute must have enterprise capability, learning to learn.
Yeah. And this mindset of, hey, better, better, and never done. You constantly learn the
Yes.
latest and the greatest, trial, error, rapid iteration. I think what you also unlocked for me is, there's the velocity, but with transformational learning, it's going to unlock enterprise growth at a very different rate. And if I think about, hey, right now there's a lot of, just in enterprise B2B SaaS, like we're talking about, hey, winning the AI war. And I mean, there's no deniability, like talent is basically the most important area for us, right? Because it's our creativity, our capability, and even like how we unlock the power of AI, just like a cursor or windsurf, it's
Yep.
all in our hands. So, from a corporate CEO's perspective, if they just treat learning and development as, oh, this is a cost center, they're so wrong and so off. What they should be doing is, okay, I'm going to double down on investing my people, investing in like getting them to embrace AI, learn with AI, experiment with AI, and like celebrate it, recognize those people who are at the frontier of innovation, and create that kind of enterprise culture.
Yeah, those are the disruptors, and we don't emphasize their value enough. A disruptor is someone who can see an assumption and say, because of this new technology, this assumption no longer holds. Here's the assumption that replaces it, and here are the opportunities it creates for us. We look at disruptors now and we think, disruption. I don't want to disrupt myself. I don't want to be disrupting my own business model. But if you don't, someone else is in process of doing it right now. It is going to happen, and you might as well be the one who profits from it, not be the
Yes.
one who is disrupted by it and who potentially you could lose your business at this point. This is one of those moments where we will see companies that you can't imagine failing starting to
Yeah.
falter.
Yeah, this actually reminds me of Clayton Christensen, who's a top business thinker, really focused on innovation, and creating disruptive innovation within a large enterprise. I was wondering, just from you working with different companies and C-suite executives, what kind of system do you put in place? Right, because a lot of his philosophy was, hey, if you just put the innovation in one little corner over here, it's
Yep.
not going to change like the entire enterprise. But like, say more about from your practical experience perspective, what would you recommend to a C-suite executive who want to embrace AI?
So I explained that innovation is not the same throughout the enterprise. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, you have to have innovation everywhere, but innovation in your marketing team is going to be very different than innovation in your technology team. And even within your technology team, you have data and AI organizations. Their version of innovation is going to look very different than your digital and cloud parts of the technology organization.
Yep.
So we have incremental innovation, we have disruptive innovation, we have people who have to make it. So these are the makers, the doers, the engineering side. Their
Mm-hmm.
version of innovation is very, very different than a marketer who brings their domain expertise, their years of experience, and their understanding with just a little bit of technical knowledge. Whereas the
Mm-hmm.
engineer, it's a lot of technical knowledge and a
Yeah.
little bit of domain expertise. And when you start cross pollinating, meaning the
Yep.
technology expertise seeps into other parts of the business and the domain expertise seeps back into your technology team, when your customers, and something Palantir's amazing at, is being able to send out these forward deploy engineers. Salesforce, what do? They just, hey, all customers, come here, tell us what you're thinking, tell us what you're doing, and so there's a number of different approaches that
Mm-hmm.
you can use to get that voice of the customer just absolutely infused into your business. And when you kind of create that
Yeah.
three-sidedness where it's technology, domain expertise, and just laser focus. I know exactly what the customer need is. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because I watched it, I saw it, I felt
Mm-hmm.
it, I heard them
Yep.
say it. When you have that within an enterprise, you can do the types of innovation that you need to, because some of it is technical and that gets way too much focus. We are
Mm-hmm.
really good as engineers. If you give us a good problem statement, even if
Yep.
it's a problem that's never been solved before, a lot of engineers have frameworks to solve
Yep.
unsolvable problems, break it
Yes.
down. We were actually talking
Yep.
about this a little earlier with the way Elon Musk thinks and breaking things
Yep.
down to first principles.
Yep.
We can break things down to first principles, and wow, sounds like a knowledge graph? Kind of is. Sounds like a structural causal
Mm-hmm.
model? Kind of is. And you begin to see overlaps between the way people work and the way that information and AI can enable us to work and to innovate. And then you need people at the front line who are constantly looking at their workflow, taking just a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of domain expertise or a lot of domain
Yep.
expertise, a little bit of technical expertise, and saying, you know what we could do, and reinventing their workflow. not just bolting things on,
Yep.
completely reinvent the workflow, blow it up, and say, we don't have to do things this way anymore. If we apply technology this
Yep.
way, here's the new workflow, and here's why it would be so much more powerful. Here's how we would be able to deliver more customer value. Here's why we would be able to meet that, the third piece, that piece
Mm-hmm.
of the customer need that's unserved or underserved. Here's what we would
Mm-hmm.
be able to do for them that we were never able to do in the past. And when you combine those three things together,
Yep.
you have an absolute innovation dynamo. But the last piece that I always caution C-level leaders about, and especially
Mm-hmm.
technologists, is
Yeah.
if you can't justify it to the CFO, you're in trouble. And I talk about the innovation
Mm-hmm.
mix. You have to have the right mixture that meets the business's risk tolerance. If the business
Mm-hmm.
is really, I mean, they're banging on all cylinders, the product's working, everything's
Yep.
growing. It's really hard to
Yep.
talk your CFO into accepting innovation, but you have to explain part of every product life cycle is the end. And we want to have a pipeline full of innovations coming to market when we
Mm-hmm.
get to the point where our product hits that commoditization cycle, when there's heavy competition. We
Mm-hmm.
want to be ready with that next innovation that's going to
Yep.
be, the next hockey stick leg where we
Yeah.
go higher again. We want to have that in the pipeline. What
Yep.
happens if we don't? What happens if we wait until commoditization to do that
Mm-hmm.
innovation cycle? Well, our
Mm-hmm.
margins are smaller. We have less money to invest. And what are investors doing? They are scrutinizing every dollar that's spent because
Mm-hmm.
margins are coming down. So
Right.
we can't make any mistakes. When your margins are high, you can make some innovation mistakes, and that will
Mm-hmm.
happen.
Right.
Innovation is risky by nature. So you want to
Mm-hmm.
take risks when you're going to get the lowest punishment for them and when you have the most money
Mm-hmm.
to invest in that next growth engine that takes the business to that next leg of exponential growth. So we have to justify this to the CFO and say, look, if we don't do this, we hit the end of the product cycle and economics
Yeah.
101. What happens?
Wow. There's so much to unpack here. One is you touched on this, and this is actually in line with what I'm seeing from all of our agentic transformation patterns is agentic transformation actually comes from very different patterns from digital transformation or cloud transformation. Because unlike the digital transformation or cloud transformation where it's very IT led, agentic transformation, it really, the KPIs sit within the line of the business owners and leaders. And that subject matter expertise coupled with your technology expertise and understanding of the workflows and embed it to drive bigger rollout is ultimately like what delivers a ton of value for the enterprise. And then the second thing that you mentioned is like, hey, make sure whatever you're doing, translate that language into what the CFO cares about, which is either in the form of like top line growth, bottom line margin improvement. And by the way, if your margin is good, try to invest into the next frontier of innovation, because if we think about Jeffrey Moore's like four quadrants, you're going to have some products that are going to like, hey, maturity, productization, and like, you just make it more productive. But you always have products that are in the innovation transformation zones that are going to supercharge your growth later on. So it's a very fine balance from like an investment portfolio investment standpoint. But look at the big picture, translate that for the CFO. um I love all of this. Thank you, thank you. Okay, let's wrap up. If there's one piece of advice to a new C-suite executive, CEO, trying to scale AI in the enterprise, what would it be?
Meet the business where it is, not where you expect it to be or where you think it
Yeah.
should be. Always go around on that listening tour, and everyone knows to do a listening tour. But as
Mm-hmm.
you're doing that listening tour, do an initial assessment. Figure out where every business unit is at in terms of maturity and figure out what they've been sort of delivered that didn't work. Because your biggest barriers
Mm-hmm.
to that improving that transformation
Yeah.
rate, that acceleration, are going to be business units that have been let down before. And we assume coming in, because AI has all this hype, we assume that
Yeah.
we've kind of got this clean mandate, clear lane, And what's the reality is businesses have three types of debt that slow down transformation. Yes,
Mm,
technical debt is one of them, and that's what we
mhm.
overemphasize. But there's
Yep.
two other kinds. There's cultural debt and there's strategic debt. And in many cases, when you look backward, you realize that cultural debt and strategic debt are caused by overpromise, underdeliver, or are caused by
Mhm.
solutions that didn't fit the true need or that degraded over time, or so
Mhm.
many of these things that they sounded good then, but they
Yeah.
didn't do exactly what they were supposed to do. We have to surface those problems because one of the fastest ways to gain trust and to get those quick
Mhm.
wins, everybody's like, oh, we got to do quick wins. The
Yeah.
fastest way to get a quick win is just fix the things that have already been promised. Fix the things that the
Mhm.
rest of the business
Mhm.
thinks are
Yep.
working, and as
Yep.
soon as you do that, what you've done with trust is now they know you're not just going to drop and run.
Right.
Even if it doesn't work perfectly, you're going to be
Yeah.
there and you're
Yeah.
going to continue to continuously improve it until it
Yeah.
does exactly what you said it does. Because I'd say 80 or 90% of your initiatives are going to land and they're going to be very good. They won't be perfect,
Yeah.
but they'll be very good. But it's that
Yeah.
10% that loses you the most trust and credibility. It won't
Mm.
happen
Mhm.
if they trust and there's an open line of communication where they know this
Mhm.
person has
Yeah.
come back and fixed things that weren't working.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
do that assessment, that audit,
Mhm.
and then you start fixing, then you start making good on other people's promises, you will
Mm. Mhm.
gain that clear lane that you think you have, and you'll remove a lot of roadblocks to transformation. People will be willing to give you the benefit of the doubt, and that's what they
Mhm.
have to do because
Yeah.
AI is this sort of, we think we understand it, but we don't
Right.
really. And
Right.
you're telling us this is going to do some things that we're not completely sure you can actually deliver. And
Yeah.
they need that extra step of trust. And if you build that up front during your
Mhm.
listening tour, everything else after it goes more smoothly.
I love it. Thank you so much, Vin. It's been such a pleasure to have you. I learned so much. I hope our audience also really loved this session. And there's so many insights to unpack. So thank you so much, Vin. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.